Why is this game so hard?
Celeste, whatever you want to call it, is an indie 2D platformer developed and published by Matt Makes Games. They should really change their website's URL. This game started development all the way back in August 2015. Celeste's gameplay was designed to be minimal and accessible, featuring game mechanics to make the game more complex, while at the same time also adding in stuff like an assist mode to make the game a bit less challenging. The game was initially developed for the Pico 8, a virtual machine and game engine, and it was later known as Celeste Classic and appeared in the final product as a hidden minigame. Celeste was released on January 25, 2018 for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Windows, Mac, and Linux, before being released on Xbox One the next day and on Google Stadia in July 2020.
Alright, let's try this game out. This game looks charming enough, so it can't be that difficult, can it? Can it?
Alright, here we are, so we can jump, climb walls, and dash. This game has 8 chapters divided into many single-screen challenges with checkpoints in case, you know. Some of these levels contain paths leading to optional challenges and hidden collectibles, with the main collectible being the strawberries. These strawberries don't serve any purpose besides being fun little collectibles, but you can get an achievement if you collect all of them. Of course, since this game is made to be challenging, there is a death counter for each level. So our goal is to reach the summit of Celeste Mountain, which is actually a real-life location, though in this game it is a more fictionalized version to fit with the theme and setting of the game. And along the way, we encounter a bunch of characters who help us reach our goal, while others try to kill us. I think. So this is the first chapter of the game. This chapter introduces many of the main game mechanics. Every chapter in this game takes around 20 to 30 minutes to finish, with some of the chapters being slightly longer. This first level is a great introduction to the game. It somehow manages to be challenging, but not too difficult at the same time. Of course, since this game is challenging, you're going to die a lot. But it doesn't make you rage a ton, well, at least for me. As the name of the chapter implies, we are in an abandoned city, with the whole place snowing and mechanical structures broken or destroyed. This first chapter is great, but it can be a bit challenging. Now moving to the plot, we are introduced to a hiker named Theo. Theo explains that he came to visit the mountain to explore and take pictures. So we return to climbing the mountain where, at the end of the level, we encountered a memorial and decide to make camp there for the night. So we wake up and enter an abandoned site with space-like blocks scattered around the place. We encounter a mirror and our reflection appears to be a darker version of our character. That darker version of us escaped through the mirror and the space blocks can now be interacted with. By dashing into these blocks, the blocks transport us from one side to another. However, you'll die when you dash into a space block and it transports you straight to a wall. So we find our reflection sitting by a dead campfire. The reflection reveals to be a part of us.
You're welcome.
Our reflection tries to convince us to stop climbing the mountain. Of course, we refuse and now we have a chase sequence. And this is where everything gets more intense. And by that, I mean the part where you're going to die a lot. I don't hate this part of the level. In fact, I think this part is pretty good in terms of gameplay and narrative. It's such an adrenaline rush and it's really exciting. But maybe for some people this part might be a bit longer than it needs to be. But I don't really have complaints about this part of the level. It's just great. So our reflection stops chasing us and disappears. We pick up a payphone and we are answered by a guy who we have a confusing conversation with. Our reflection appears in front of us, transforms the payphone into a monster and eats us. And would you look at that? It was all a dream.
Do I have to say it twice?
So we come across this bridge with this dark goo that can kill us and we make our way to a hotel/resort. The hotel owner, Oshiro, appears in front of us and convinces us to stay here, though we really have to get going. Oshiro insisted on taking us to our room, so we followed him. On the way, we encounter a bunch of obstacles with the dark goo again. There are also these gates that can only be opened by activating these orbs. They can be pretty tricky to get to, so keep that in mind. Then we enter a room with a bunch of stuff scattered around. Oshiro says that it is hopeless to clean this place up while being overdramatic. So we decided to clean up the place, and Oshiro is very thankful for that.
He wants to kill us!
We have to dash mash the jello so that everything gets cleaned up, and we have to do this 3 times. After smashing a jello, you have to find and talk to Oshiro so that he can open the other 2 paths to each one of the jello. I don't see why we need to talk to him to open up these paths. He could have just let them open for us after we found him in this room in the first place, and while heading to one of the jello, we encountered Dio trying to get out of this place. And I'm honestly curious as to why he's here and what he's doing here. I know both of us are trying to climb the mountain, but why would he feel the need to enter this place besides, shelter? And even then, how the hell did he get here before me? So Theo escapes through the vents and waits for us outside while we try to help Oshiro and his hotel. Our reflection showed up and said some hurtful things to Oshiro. He gets mad, starts chasing us, and we run for our lives. Here we have another chase sequence, and honestly, I think this one's a bit easier than the last one. Oshiro turns to normal, and he asks us to leave. Good luck with the repairs, I guess. This chapter is the worst by far. It features wind mechanics and other new objects such as the clouds, green bubbles, and moving platforms that can be triggered by the player's interaction. The clouds give you a little jump boost when timed correctly, while other clouds disappear the moment you jumped on them. The timing can get a while to get used to in order to get the jump boost. Once you jump or dash into a green bubble, it will make you dash into whichever direction you're facing. But it'll make you dash almost instantly, so you better react quickly. Do note that the green bubbles reset your dash, allowing you to reach a further distance. And then we have these moving platforms. To get these platforms moving, you can either jump on them or cling to their sides. If they touch a wall, it'll take them a second or two to vanish and then reset to the place they once were. Some of the moving platforms allow you to change their direction manually by simply moving the left thumbstick to the spot where you want to go. And now we have this. Remember in Ninja Gaiden 2 about the second level with the wind mechanic? This one might be worse. Since this game consists of tricky platforms which require you to time your jumps consistently, the wind makes everything way harder. Near the end of the level, I keep failing over and over because of the timing, the platforms, and the wind, obviously.
I guess this is karma for not having any lungs.
Now back to the story. We meet the old woman who we met earlier in the first level. She tells us that we should give up considering the dangers that lie ahead, but we continue regardless. At the end of the level, we arrive at an old looking gondola. Theo arrives and we both use the gondola to go up. Theo takes another selfie with us as our reflection appears on top of the gondola, causing it to stop, and thus we have a panic attack. Theo tries to calm us down by teaching us a coping mechanism he once learned. We calm down and the gondola starts working again, and we arrive at the top of the ravine. This chapter takes place in an ancient temple. The entire area is pretty dark, so you might need to light the torches scattered around the place by going near them. It's easy to get lost in this place, and it might take a while to figure out how to progress and move on to the next area. This chapter introduces tons of new stuff. First up are these red bubbles. They're like the same bubbles from the last chapter, but now they act more like the space blocks from the second chapter, and you can cancel the dash manually by dashing yourself. We have these blocks that move whenever you dash. These things react fast, so you gotta time your jumps properly. There are also these huge buttons that open gates whenever you dash into them. Back into the story. Theo enters the temple before us, and now we gotta find him. We encounter him inside the mirror, so we have to find a way to get him out. On the way to find Theo, we find a giant mirror that sucks us into a portal and into someplace else. Then we take control of this squid-like monster. We find ourselves and kill ourselves.
Feel free to use that quote.
We escape that place and the whole temple seems to be freaking out. Our reflection appears and she tells us that this whole thing is caused by us. We make our way through, and this is where the annoying part of the level comes in. Do you remember the squid-like monster we controlled earlier? Yeah, now there are tons of them and they're trying to kill us. Just like us, they have the ability to dash. They can destroy these orange blocks if they dash into them. We also have these barriers that prevent these monsters from getting into us, but man, they're brutal. They follow you everywhere and they act like homing missiles, and sometimes they can be pretty difficult to dodge. So we make our way through and enter another huge area with multiple pathways leading to smaller areas. Just like earlier, it's really easy to get lost in this area without the torches lit, and it gets more irritating with the fact that there is one of the monsters in there. So just try to stay away from that thing so that it can't chase you everywhere. In this area, there are 2 gates that you need to open to enter the next area. And since there are 2 gates, you need to find 2 keys that can be found in one of the sub-areas. So we find Theo, who is trapped inside a crystal, which means we have to carry him throughout the end of the level. While carrying Theo, you can't dash, but you can still jump. But my goodness, this part is annoying. While trying to get out of here with Theo, you gotta complete some chores first. Whether be it activating shields or opening gates, it's annoying. And when you're near a gate that takes you to the next area, there's little to no movement for you to jump when the monster is trying to dash at you. And don't get me started in this part. 2 of them? So we reach the end where a giant eyeball is blocking the way, we throw Theo at it, it dies, and we escaped. This chapter may be my favorite of the entire game. It's one of the most important chapters story-wise, and the chapter's atmosphere and level design are so lively and colorful. But then again, it still has the difficult platforming. This chapter introduces the feather, which allows us to fly in any direction for a short period of time. We also have these brown platforms where if you dash against one of their sides, the platform will charge in the direction of the side that you dashed against. The platform will continue to charge until it collides with a wall, which will move the platform back to its initial position. Before we proceed with the level, we and Theo started a little conversation detailing what happened in the previous chapter and why both of us are climbing the mountain. Then we get to a short dream section where we are introduced to the feathers. We confronted our reflection, try to come to terms with them. Of course, the reflection denies, we wake up, and we fall all the way down. We encounter the old lady once again and she gives us some words of wisdom. She also tells us that the reflection is scared and we should confront her once more. We find and try to help her, she denies, again, and we get another sort of chase sequence, except this time, we chase her now. All we gotta do is to get close to her and she'll move to another position. Whenever you do this, you'll bounce off and blocks will either fall from above or move in certain directions. In every phase, she gains new attacks like throwing orbs, targeting lasers, and shooting more orbs. I really like this sequence. Not only is it fun and engaging gameplay-wise, but also adds to the narrative of this chapter and the entire story. But like previous chase sequences, you're gonna die here a lot. The reflection finally gave up and now we decide to work together by giving a power up. Now we can dash twice in a row. The whole gang arrives, another conversation, and the chapter ends. So now we have reached the final chapter of the game as we climb from here all the way to the summit. This chapter contains all of the elements and mechanics from the previous chapters, including this, these, this, and this. No! This, and this. Not only those, but they also included the settings and designs of the previous chapters. It's really cool to see all the previous chapters crammed into one big finale. Now, of course, since this chapter contains everything from the beginning, this chapter retains the difficulty of the mechanics of the previous levels. Now you might think that this chapter just inserts a previous section of a certain chapter and calls it quits. Well, no. Since we got Mario Kart Double Dash from the last chapter, they designed the levels to challenge this new gimmick we got while also trying to stay true to the level design and mechanics of the certain chapters. At the end of each level, our reflection shows up as a purple orb. Once we get close to it, we are lifted upwards and we are taken to the next level. But what does this chapter call for its own besides including previous levels? Well, this chapter has its own level where we are nearing our goal to reach the summit. This entire level doesn't contain a ton of gimmicks from the previous chapters, except the feather from the previous chapter. It mostly involves tricky platforming, tight jumps and dashes, and precise timing. You're gonna die a lot here, which is why there are tons of checkpoints scattered around the place. There are 28 checkpoints here, so you know that this level will take a lot of time and attempts to beat. This felt like the final challenge of the game, except that it isn't. Either way, this entire level is challenging, and I mean it. It is challenging even without all the gimmicks from the previous chapters. This felt like the challenge because the entire progression in this level depends on you, your timing, and your skills. There are a lot of areas that require said things, and most of them require you to be quick on your feet, meaning you need to react as fast as possible. Moving back to the story, before transitioning to the next level each time, we get a little conversation with our reflection, recalling the events that happened in the previous chapters. These conversations didn't feel useless, as the whole point in climbing this mountain is to confront our inner conflicts, which is what we did in the last chapter and what we're doing right now in this chapter. Nevertheless, we have finally reached the summit. We have a little heart-to-heart conversation with ourselves, deciding about what we should do next or to return home. We insisted on taking a few more moments admiring the view, and then the chapter ends. But is it really over? No. We return to the old lady's cabin where we'll be celebrating. The whole gang arrives and we'll be baking a strawberry pie for everybody.
Now, if you collect all of the strawberries before completing Chapter 7, you get a different ending depending on how many strawberries you collected. And so far, in my first playthrough, I got this many. Not my best, but at least I got more than 25.
Chapter 8 introduces a ton of new features, most notably the inability to recharge dashes. Now, on the outside, that doesn't sound too much of a problem, but the levels here are insane. Without having to recharge dashes, you really need to work on your timing in each area. Now, before progressing the entire chapter, there is this gate that blocks you from going any further. In order to get through the gate, you need to backtrack to the previous chapters and collect a total of 4 crystal hearts. Once you collect enough hearts and pass through the gate, you are now in hell. There are fireballs scattered around the place, and when the place turns cold, they turn into ice balls that have spikes on the bottom and can be jumped on the top. We have these blocks which will launch a player in the direction that they were touching it from upon being grabbed or landed on. When the environment is cold, these blocks change and they turn into a different kind of block that slowly sink when grabbed or landed on and shatter afterwards. We also have these hot bumpers that can kill you upon contact, and when it is cold, these things turn into those bumpers that are found in Chapter 6. There are also conveyor walls that launch you upwards when you grab into them, and when it is cold, these turn into ice balls that you cannot grab onto. There are these barriers which are either ice or lava that can kill you if you get close to them. They'll appear or disappear depending on whether the switches are toggled to hot or cold. Now, speaking of switches, these things toggle everything between hot and cold. When flipped to hot, the bumpers turn into hot bumpers, shattering blocks into launching blocks, ice walls into conveyor walls, ice balls into fireballs, and the lava gates disappear. When flipped to cold, it does the same thing in reverse. Now that's a lot of gimmicks to take note of.
But surely it can't be that difficult. After all, this isn't the final chapter of the game, so they might be saving the difficulty in the final chapter. Right?
I cannot stress how much time I spent trying to get past this section. It took me so long, but I still got it. I won, but at what cost? And the latter half of the chapter, really challenging. It took so many attempts, but I managed to beat it. Oh, I almost forgot the story. Sorry. So we return to the mountain about a year later to explore the mountain's secrets. We are told that the core of the mountain has extreme power and will affect our abilities. After roughly 844 deaths, we enter a dark room. The room is empty, yet it feels nostalgic somehow. This is the final chapter of the game and was introduced as a free update to the game. This chapter is by far the longest and most challenging chapter of the entire game, as it introduces tons of new objects and mechanics. The first one is double diamonds. In the second subchapter, we lose the ability to dash twice. These double diamonds act like the green gems from all the previous chapters which reset your dashes, but this time, these double diamonds do the same thing but grant us the ability to dash twice. Next we have these exploding fishes. We can bounce on top of them, but these guys explode which pushes us in a certain direction when we're right in front, behind, or below them. There are these large jellyfish that can be grabbed to increase hang time. While holding, you can change the speed to fall more slowly or quickly. Normal movement, jumping, or wall jumping are all possible while holding a jellyfish, while they must be released in order to dash. Holding on to the jellyfish does not consume stamina and they do not replenish our dashes. These jellyfish are not affected by most surfaces except for these barriers, which instantly destroy the jellyfish upon contact. Next, we have these futuristic looking platforms that function very similarly to the conveyor belt platforms from the previous chapters. Then we have these generators. When dashed twice, they will remove all electric obstacles from the screen for further progression. Lastly, we have the bird. It launches the player to the right similarly to the purple orbs from the previous chapters. Now that we have all of those out of the way, let's talk about how hard this chapter is. They weren't kidding. This is just the first part of the chapter, and I've died 100 times. I've spent nearly a total of 2 hours getting past the first 4 sub-chapters, and then there's this. Remember the blue gate from chapter 8? Yeah, well it's back now and you have to collect 15 hearts to progress. This means you have to collect all the crystal hearts from every previous chapter in addition to the hearts of the B-sides. Now, what are the B-sides? They are shorter but more challenging versions of a specific chapter. And don't even get me started with the B-side of chapter 2. I've spent so much time trying to get to this heart. I could have spent all that time trying to get alive, but no. I have to fully beat this game for the sake of existence. This is my curse.
I have to beat this game, even if only a few people watch me do it. Nothing is impossible, and I can beat this game. I got all the hearts I needed. Now for the final challenge.
Yes! There's a cutscene? So we're somewhere in the future and we visit the gravestone of the old woman whom we had developed a strong relationship with. We see the bird as a part of the old woman and set off to space. We attempt to catch the bird multiple times. In the process, we begin to accept that Granny will be truly gone forever. Together, we decide to help free the bird that we had cornered, sort of a tribute to Granny. Afterwards, we meet Granny for the last time. We apologize to her for not attending her funeral and thank her for helping us on our journey up the mountain. Granny slowly disintegrates and shortly after, we wake up. We start chatting with Theo, who had tried contacting us for a long time. Theo then shows an old photograph of Granny and Theo's grandpa. Finally, we are happy that our experience climbing the mountain with Theo was just like that of Theo's grandpa and Gran. So we have finally finished the main story of Celeste. What are my thoughts? It was a roller coaster of emotions, I can tell you that. The story tackles depression and anxiety, and what I think the game is telling us is that you have to embrace or work alongside the things that bring you down so that you can reach your full potential. Celeste is full of emotions that we all feel, and some are completely dominated by. Our main objective was to climb the mountain, but as we dive deeper, progress more, it wasn't only the mountain that we have to overcome, but ourselves. And that right there really grabs my attention in this whole story. It's ironic that a game about dealing with stress gave me stress. This game is ruthless to an extent, but it mostly doesn't feel unfair at times. The gameplay is simple and easy to learn at the get-go, but as we progress to each chapter, it gets more and more difficult to adapt these gameplay mechanics because of the added gimmicks in each chapter, right? Each chapter introduces something new that you have to learn, but not in a way that you have to totally master it, if you know what I'm saying. And one thing that I like is that whenever you fail, you pick up where you left off immediately. And it's not like in Cuphead where they show your progress through a level and the enemies mock you to piss you off. Celeste doesn't have any of that, and I think that's good because in a way, it somehow correlates with the main theme and message of the story.
Despite being the hardest game I've ever beaten yet, this game is a masterpiece. There's a lot to love about Celeste. The story, the smart mechanics of the game, the beautiful soundtrack, the challenging but fair gameplay and level design. They've put a lot of thought and care into this small yet expansive package. And I can't believe I spent 18 hours just trying to beat this game. I should probably go to sleep. Oh hey, just when you thought it can't get any worse. It got worse! Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is a platform video game developed by... Who? Bennett Foddy. Thank you. So what is this game? How does it play? Well, it revolves around you controlling characters stuck in a large cauldron. You wield a long hammer which you can use to grip objects and move around. You try to move and progress your objects associated with difficult platforms and other stuff. And this is how you basically move throughout the entire game. You can only move using a mouse or trackpad, which can get incredibly exhausting in a long playthrough. There are no checkpoints in any part of the game, which increases the risk of losing some of your progress, causing you to go all the way back down. So, what else? There's text, and someone talks in this game. Thank you. The game was released on October 6, 2017 on Windows, 2 months later on Mac and iOS, Android on April 25, 2018, and on Linux around August 2018. So that pretty much wraps up everything about this game. The first reason I want to play this game is that it's difficult. The second reason is that it's part of my character arc. So let's play this game, and I promise I won't underestimate everything that this game has to offer. So we control our character by moving the hammer around. This portion of the game is more of a tutorial per se. It's pretty simple. We're off to a great start. Then we made it into this section, and this is where the game truly begins. This is the first real part of the game, and this is pretty much what the whole game is going to be.
I mean, what else can I say? It's a physics-based game with obstacles. I could talk about it or just make a rage compilation like Markiplier. Either way, I'm not interesting at all, which means there's no reason for you to watch me in the first place. But here we are. We can only move using a mouse, and since this game is frustrating as hell, it can get pretty exhausting to move your arm around with the mouse. But you can change the mouse sensitivity. I just use the default setting. There's not much strategy here, it all just depends on how fast you can move your mouse. Whenever you meet a new obstacle, you can pretty much take a risk and try to figure out how to get over it. But since I'm a good person and have nothing else to do, I'll give you guys a guide to the entirety of the game. So here's my first tip. Don't. If you're listening to me, do not play this game. I've only reached this point because I've got nothing to do. So if you also got nothing to do something else other than play this game. So here's the real first tip. You can launch yourself by pointing your hammer to the ground then flick your mouse. Trust me when I say that this move will really help you. There are certain obstacles that you can't reach just by swinging your thumb around. Just note that sometimes you launch far away and sometimes you don't. Next, when reaching these two parts, doing this can give you a slight jump. It'll bounce you to the other side, and this is actually really useful to do when you're in either of these parts. So what's the next tip? Don't panic. When you fall or lose your progress, don't wiggle around. Sure, you may not control your anger when you lose progress, but when you try to rush back to where you were, you'll end up having another risk of losing more progress and starting all the way back here. This problem is the most prevalent when playing this game. With a game that's sole purpose is to give you a headache, it's easy to lose your progress constantly. Now let's talk about levels. In this part, you should swing by the branch. You can launch yourself and quickly grab the roof, but for me it's easier to just swing by the branch. Once you make it to the barrels, launch yourself upwards and try to move the coffee away. If you do this, you can move on to this part. Now, this part is pretty tricky. There are multiple places for you to rest, but some of the rocks can get in the way of you moving on to the next area. I recommend staying on this spot, launching yourself upwards and quickly grabbing the ledge. You might need to do this a couple of times since this rock here can bounce you up once you launch yourself. Next, there's this red steel thingy. You can either move to this spot or here, though this spot is riskier and you might fall off and start all over. This thing can slide you off, but there's this little area here that you can grab onto. Then we move on to this area. This area will take a lot of tries, but if you remember that trick I told you earlier, this area will be a breeze. Now once you made it to the top here, be extra careful. You need to launch yourself to the right and quickly grab onto the ledge. It's easy to accidentally bounce off here, but it doesn't happen too frequently unless you're not being careful. Once you climb on top of this building, you need to grab onto this thing and swing yourself to the left. When you reach the end of the thing, there's this little gap that you need to be extra careful in this area because you might accidentally fall all the way down. Next, we have to be extra careful in this area because
the mountain seems no more a soulless thing, but rather as a shape of ancient fear, in darkness and the winds of chaos born, amid the lordless heavens thundering, a presence crouched, enormous and austere, before whose feet the mighty waters mourn.
this area here is absurd. There are very few objects to grab onto and it's easy to fail at this part over and over. And it's right next to this area here. Once you made it to the boxes, just casually drop down here and quickly grab the boxes. I wouldn't recommend launching yourself because you might bounce off to the side here. Now we made it to the stairs. This part you're going to try a lot. It's easy to fall down here and it's difficult to progress through this area. But if you remember the trick we used in that one part, you can also use that trick here. There are many ledges here that you can grab onto, but there's very little area for you to do so. So slightly launch yourself upwards and swing your hammer to the right. You need to do this repeatedly. Once you made it, try to move yourself onto the tip of the chair. You want to be as close as you can to launch yourself towards the camera. You won't have any height once you launch, so quickly grab onto. Now try to move slightly to the right and launch yourself towards the couch. Again, you won't have enough height to reach it, so quickly grab onto it. Now this part isn't the trickiest, but I advise you to not want to rush this part. You've made a ton of progress at this point, so carefully and slowly make your way through this part. Now we made it to the orange. In this part you have to be extra careful. It's easy to bounce off when you reach the rocks, and there aren't many platforms where you're safe. It's basically a 50-50 of you losing progress and progressing through this part. I would know that because if I didn't, I wouldn't have this footage here. Once you made it to the building, you still need to be careful here because you're nowhere near safe yet. You just need to launch yourself and grab onto the ledge here. And you need to do this twice, with the next obstacle being this hand. There's very little room here, so you need to be very careful when launching yourself upwards. Once you made it to the roof, launch yourself slightly to the right and try to grab onto the ledge here. Again, be careful. When you move over to the next area, you're safe now and the risk of going all the way down is gone. Then the next part is pretty easy. Stand on the hedge and launch yourself towards the roof of this house. I recommend you move this hat off the screen so that you have less stuff to worry about. When you reach the anvil, you have to move yourself to its very corner and launch yourself to grab onto the ledge. The ledge is pretty high up and this part will take a lot of tries. There's no room for failure here. If you fail, you just land next to the anvil, so take your time in this part. Then you have to launch yourself onto this floating rock. You have to be extra careful here because it's easy to fall off accidentally. You can't see where the next platform is, but if you move slightly down to the left, you can see where the next rock is. The next rock is much smaller, but this one is closer to the next platform at least. But if you fall down, you can see that it's actually a snowman. No reason to point this out, but I did. Moving on. You have to do this a few more times until you eventually move to this part. Do not ride the snake. Do not ride it. Do not ever ride the snake. If you do, you're going to regret many things in life. This part may be the trickiest yet. You need to launch yourself and grab onto the bucket. Then swing gently so that you don't fall off. Let go and quickly grab onto the ledge here. It's easy to fall off if you're swinging a bit too hard, so be gentle when doing this part. Now when you made your way to the slope, you need to be careful as well. This part will take a lot of tries and you can lose a ton of progress if you fail. So once you made it here, be very careful. Try to rest here and launch yourself gently and swing your hammer to the right. After you climb this structure, you finally made it to the final obstacle of the game, the radio tower. All you need to do is to grab onto the radio dishes and try not to bounce off the side. It gets trickier the more you reach the top, and the radio dishes get smaller every time. I advise you once more to be extra careful. If you fail, you will go all the way down and you will suffer as I have suffered. Once you made it to the top, launch yourself upwards and make your way through space. And that's the game. Why did I play this? Now that we got all of those out of the way, are there a few things to appreciate in this game? Well, I'm glad this game is pretty cheap because if it weren't, you would be buying the greatest ripoff in video game history. I do like the randomness of the game. There are so many objects that appear in the game that have no business being in here. I mean, sure, it's a physics game, so it needs different objects for its obstacles, but still, why is there a child here? The mouse being the only control method adds to the frustration of the game, so I think this game would also work well with a controller. I imagine it might be worse than using a mouse. Actually, I'm regretting this idea. Please, if any modders watch this, do not make a mod for this. I want to make another video talking about Ben Fart. Though I hate this game with all my heart, I have to credit Barry Furry for making a game that's hell-bent on giving you the worst time of your life that makes you want to punch a child. It did its job well, and that's at least something I could appreciate to something I deeply hate. Is it a good game? No. But looking at this game critically, maybe. My hatred for this game completely overpowers my will to critique this game justly. I don't know how to rate this game, so maybe in a few years I'll look back at this game and give it a proper rating. I'm not gonna play it again, no, it's just that I couldn't rate it now. So let's see what my future self thinks about this game. I hate this.
Why is this game not so hard? Oh hey, I went back to check up on Celeste and I found something funny looking. This is not how I remembered it.
I never thought I'd see you again. We all know Celeste, a 2D platformer that's well known for its innovative gameplay, level design, and unique story. It's one of the most popular indie titles of all time, and it brought together many people around the world. It's a game focused on depression and finding self-worth, in which we have to overcome our passive limitations and climb to achieve peace. Literally. I had a lot of fun playing the game, and it's definitely one of my favorite games of all time, which I never really expected. I never expected an indie game that I'd never heard of before to become one of my all-time favorites. It's astonishing. I like everything that there is about Celeste, except of course, the B-side levels. That one level still gives me nightmares to this day. But by the time I talked about Celeste, it was already around 5 years old. It's weird because obviously I've never heard of this game before, but the game felt like it came around during the pandemic, and it is something that felt like it could have been released in that timeline, but again, it's still amazing that there are still people around the world playing this game and making videos about it, which shows how Celeste still has an active player base. So to commemorate the game's 6th anniversary, the indie studio Maddie Makes Games developed a free bite-sized game titled Celeste 64 Fragments of the Mountain. As the title suggests, this is a take on Super Mario 64, turning Celeste, a 2D platformer, into 3D, while also keeping the textures a bit low res to make it feel like we're playing an actual N64 game. You can easily download this game on your PC, just go to the official website and click download. Once you downloaded the game, you should get it running. However, upon running the game for the first time, I got a security notice. I don't know if it's just me, but if it isn't, then this should be fixed. So it's a very minor complaint. So far, I didn't get any viruses on my laptop. Thank you, Maddie. So this is Celeste 64. Like I said earlier, it's a small game, so it explains why this game only has one giant area. Another thing to say for the developers of the game, when I played the game for the first time, I used the keyboard, and for some reason, the spacebar won't register the jump. Every other keybind works except for this one button. I get it that a controller is recommended for this since it's 3D and designed to play like Mario 64, but it really would have been nice if you could play on a keyboard with ease. I finished Celeste with a keyboard, so why is it so janky here? I get it, programming is hard, and kudos to the developers for delivering yet another addition for Celeste, but the keyboard controls are one thing I have to point out. The fact that you can't even change the controls is also a problem too, which wouldn't be a problem for people who played Celeste before in using the default controls, but it's been a long time since I played it, and clearly I forgot what the controls were. So after a short back to basics tutorial, we finally meet Granny once again. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Granny dead in the last game? Like, in chapter 9, wasn't it confirmed that she died? I don't know, but it's nice to see her back for its anniversary. So this is basically the entire game. It's just one giant area with a bunch of strawberries to collect. It's similar to Super Mario 64. One level is essentially one area with a bunch of stars to collect. It doesn't matter in what order you collect these strawberries, you just collect them. At the same time, there are also B-side tracks that you can find around the area. We'll get there eventually, but let's take a look at what we have here for now. Most of the core gameplay mechanics from Celeste are brought back here. The feather, which makes you fly for a few moments, the shards that grant you a charge of dash. Speaking of, remember in Celeste where at the last 3 levels, you can double dash due to story reasons? Well, upon starting that game, we don't have that, and it'll make sense in a few moments. The entire area is littered with obstacle courses. With how open this place is, there are a lot of ways you can collect strawberries. One thing you notice that whenever you climb a wall, you don't get tired unlike in the base game, which is an odd thing to change from the game, but it makes sense since this time it's in 3D and some things have to be altered for it to work here. There are also a bunch of secret areas that you can unlock, but I won't spoil it for you because I'm a good guy. But I will say there are signs that you can find which can help you find them. Going back to the gameplay, there's also one more thing I have to add. So whenever you're like in mid-air or something, there's this line that appears Madeline that helps you track where she's going to land. It's a fine addition here since it's 3D, but the landing feels off. Even if I move the thumbstick a centimeter away, it somehow registers me falling to my death. The controls here sometimes have perfect input, but most of the time it's a tad bit too sensitive. Also, you can't face the camera straight down to where you are. It's always at an angle, which makes landing a bit harder. Moving back to the story, at the top of this building we meet Theo. Just like before, he's still chill as ever. And I'm sorry, but this gotta be his best line yet. Well, there's not much to talk about here anymore, it's just collecting strawberries and finishing each obstacle. There's this one sign that I stumbled upon, and it's something that I have to point out. The sign tells you how to skid jump, which is going to be insanely useful in one of the B-side tracks. Essentially, what it does is you run at full speed, then you turn around quickly and jump as fast as you can. The timing here is key and it's something to try to get used to. It's a pain in the ass to learn, but it's pretty much required for one of the B-side tracks, so believe me here. Speaking of, let's go ahead to the B-side tracks. Just like the last game, the B-side tracks are a harder and more challenging version of each specific level. Since it's one giant area and the B-side tracks are scattered everywhere like strawberries, each B-side track contains its own specific challenge. So this first one I attempted gave me Vietnam flashbacks. The platforms appear according to the beat of the song in the background, which you don't really need to listen to carefully, but it's a nice starting point to figure out the timing. Luckily, this one ain't as bad compared to that nightmare. It's much shorter and less challenging, but still difficult nonetheless. So what I did here is I tried to climb onto the walls and jump to the other side and climb onto it the moment I touch it. I don't know if there's a better strategy for this, but this is the one that I used. Overall, not the hardest one, but an easy as well. For this next one, since you can climb without getting tired, this is pretty easy. You just gotta make sure that your jumps are angled properly. I got a bit greedy there. For this one, you gotta be quick on your feet. You also gotta make sure to angle the camera properly since that's going to be a major benefit for you. This one took a while as well, but it was a really fun one. Now this is the one I was talking about. This is where the skid jump is going to come in handy. A regular jump won't reach that shard, so if you skid jump correctly, you should get to the other platform and onwards. The problem here is the skid jump itself. The controls are a bit whack here and it's hard to get the skid jump to work. Even if you did a successful skid jump, most of the time you're going to be facing in the other direction instead of going straight. And you have to do this twice. For the second part, you have to angle yourself properly to try to activate all those spears and not touch the spikes. And like any other obstacle in the game, you have to restart from the beginning if you fail. I don't like this one, so let's move on to another area. If you climb to the top of this tower, the one with a ton of spikes, there's this feather here that can get you to that island. If you go there, you meet Badalin, our antagonistic counterpart. I don't know if this island is another Super Mario 64 reference, but who knows. This is where you can end the game and see the amount of time you took to get here, and how many strawberries you collected. Upon reading the sign, we finally get these voiceover credits. And that's pretty much the entire game. It's a well-rounded addition to Celeste, but it does have its problems. The controls, the platforming, the game itself is a bit too short for my liking. It's nice that it's free, but I wish we had more stuff here than what we actually got. It's a nice take on turning Celeste into 3D, and I like how even the characters notice that change. It's really cool. There isn't much story here. Even if you talk to every character here, you guys just chat about what happened, and it's nice, it's normal. But what about stuff that's happened or that's about to happen? None of them hinted at the possibility of there being a sequel other than this dialogue between Badalin. But even then, it could have been an entirely different thing. And not every character is here. I mean, what about that hotel guy? I know he's dead, but he was a character in the last game. And there's only one area here, so that doesn't make the game as replayable as Celeste. If only this game had more, it would have been a lot better, but given with what we have now, I think it's enough. All in all, it's a nice addition to Celeste and a love letter to the fanbase.
Wow. Wait. That's actually a real thing? I thought this was some sort of shitpost. So if this is real and official, can this be also real and official? Yeah, I don't know. Oh, hey. As you can see, I've been studying, and I found my glasses, finally. Ever since I've been Ninja Gaiden on the NES, I've been mastering the ways of the ninja. I've been honing my skills ever since, and that's a gun.
I want to stay away from that horrific creature, but it's a yearly basis for me to do something that's at least ninja related. So, here you go instead. Ghost Runner is an action platformer developed by Slipgate Ironworks and One More Level. Real original name. I think the people who fiddle around an elevator might be the only ones to find this name unoriginal. This game was released for the PS4, Windows, and Xbox One in October 2020, and the Switch in November, followed by a next-gen release for the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S. Ever played Spider-Man, Cyberpunk, and Celeste? Well, this is basically that whole combination of games. This game stuck in my mind for a while since I saw the pre-order trailer, and during the nearly 3 years since it launched, I forgot it even existed since it came around the same time as Cyberpunk released, until it was free in the Epic Game Store last Christmas, and that's another reason why I wanted to talk about this game. Upon watching the pre-order trailer, I was blown away by the gameplay. It reminded me a lot of Dying Light with all the parkour and stuff, and the one thing that stuck with me was the combat. It's so fast-paced and thrilling, so immediately after buying the game, I downloaded it and gave it a try. As you can see, after playing Ninja Gaiden, I suddenly forgot we live in a first-person perspective.
You're alive. Can you hear me? They are already looking for you.
Immediately, the game already puts you on the run. The sick beat going on in the background along with the gorgeous futuristic setting. The tutorial shows the basics of parkour. I played Advanced Warfare, I already know how to wall run, but man, something about the level design already is just amazing to me. Sure, looking at it from the general view, some layouts make no sense, but this game takes place in the future, nothing makes sense. I know that because Star Wars showed me that hand railings become more and more non-existent in the future, but who cares? The geometry feels so fine-tuned that moving around at such a fast pace doesn't feel too buggy or sensitive. The movement feels so right with this type of game. After a short parkour section, we get the sensory boost. The sensory boost is one of the main features of the game. Being able to strafe and avoid the enemy projectiles and dash towards the enemy and slice them up. This has probably been one of the first in-game mechanics that managed to leave such an impression on me since Spider-Man PS4. I can't really say how, but something about the sensory boost feels so satisfying if it's pulled off correctly. Then we get to the first hurdle of the game, if you will. This is when the game tells you that sensory boost and fast movement are your best friends. The thing about the game is that you always gotta be fast. You can't spend a dime of a second to do nothing while in combat. It really makes you feel like you're fighting for your life. Just like Celeste, every time you fail, you get right back up to the start of the area you just got your ass handed. And it's another one of those games where you really gotta learn and master the gameplay. It's all trial and error. You gotta learn the stuff in the area carefully if you want to progress. Because of that, there are many different ways in how you approach your goal and how you plan your route. So at the beginning of the game, we see our main character already on the run. Oh, now the title makes sense. There's a voice in the main character's head and it's asking to release him from prison so that he can help unlock more of the Ghost Runner's powers. The first level is pretty basic in Ghost Runner terms, and by that I mean not easy, at least for a first time playthrough. It'll just take a while to get used to the controls and how to use your abilities to your advantage. In the next area, we get to swing around and parkour a little bit. Again, there are enemies to kill and it's pretty much the same as before. I gotta utilize swinging like Tarzan to be able to kill all the enemies. So it's pretty much the same procedure for the entirety of the game. It'll show you a new in-game mechanic and you gotta utilize that for the upcoming combat areas. It's a simple method, but with the way the platforming goes in Ghost Runner, every new area doesn't feel too repetitive, and it's always a new breath of fresh air whenever ability is introduced. Except, there is no breath of fresh air because you really gotta put a lot of focus and thinking into each and every one of these areas. Right after this area, the Ghost Runner finally meets face to face, literally, with the Architect. We enter the Cyber Void where we learn more about the history of the characters and what events occurred. The Cyber Void place serves as the puzzle areas in the game, which are pretty basic so far. Apparently, our Ghost Runner is the 74th Ghost Runner, and he doesn't seem to know his true identity. He only remembered the fight, a fall as he claims, and the Architect says that the Ghost Runner got cast down from Dharma City to the base district. The Ghost Runner remembers a woman named Mara, or the Keymaster. She and the Architect fought each other 20 years ago, and the Ghost Runner was supposed to rescue him, yet failed. The Architect died, and he is essentially an AI now. The architect used to serve humanity at Dharma Tower around a century ago. Mara had her own plan and become the ruler of Dharma Tower, ruining the architect's work and nearly killing everyone. Archie tells us that the Ghost Runner doesn't function as the Ghost Runner is supposed to, and that a group called the Climbers repaired him, though they're already dead as Archie claims. We get a closer look at what happened between Archie and Mara being Doc Ock here. This is what happens when you pair an evil tentacle woman with a butler gentleman. Right after that whole dream sequence, we are introduced to the calibration panel. This is where we can upgrade. I may have downloaded the wrong game. We only have a limited amount of space in this right box, and on the left we have the actual upgrades that we can use, each having their own attributes and specifically organized via that color. And we can fill up the right side using these upgrades like Tetris blocks. This is a really unique level up system, as you are forced to only be able to use a specific number of upgrades, which not only changes the way you play the game, but also offers a bit of strategy when it comes to combat.
Our first stop is one of the few remaining Cybervoid mainframes, located in an old mining tower. We can use it to correct the corrupted parts of your code, and hopefully restore your more sophisticated functions.
Hopefully.
During another parkour section, we intercept a radio transmission from Zoe, a surviving member of the Climbers, who's looking for help. Archie asks us to not respond, but being the Chad he is, Ghost Runner replies to the help. And it is around this time that we learn that the Ghost Runner's name is Jack. That's a shame, I thought his name would be Simon. During this chit chat, we are introduced to the bubble. This protects the enemies from dying or getting hit, and the only way to get rid of the bubble is to find its main source. Whenever you encounter this type of scenario, your main priority is to find the source of the bubble first and kill any unprotected enemies along the way. How you guys doing? We get to another Cybervoid mainframe, solve another Tetris puzzle, and we get a new ability called Blink. Years of staring competitions have gone to waste. This ability allows you to target 3 enemies at once and slice them in a single dash. Targeting enemies is a little janky here in my opinion. You really need to aim very specifically to target more than 3 enemies. This ability is really good with the right upgrades. Blinking is faster than dashing, and because of that it can get you out of sticky situations more easily. Hey guys, welcome back to the same fucking place again. Of course, being in a futuristic setting, the enemies must have more advanced weaponry, so may I introduce you to the goddamn Terminator? This guy is annoying. He leaves a long trail of bullets, and it can be very hard to avoid. But unlike the regular baddies, this guy needs time to rest and go on vacation, so you have plenty of time to give them the work treatment. There are many ways to take care of this guy, but I'll just state the 2 obvious ones. The first option is to strafe away from his gunfire, and the second option is to parry it like a madman. Then we enter this facility with deadly laser beams scattered around for platforming reasons and unnecessary sci-fi crap. It's just that the game is called Ghost Runner, not Ghost Waiter. I don't want to wait for the floor to move, I want to run.
Some decided to fight back. My parents, their friends, us all.
Our next goal is to reach the air filtering facility. For plot reasons, which I have obviously ignored in the next few minutes because I like to complain more about the gameplay, because the gameplay is what drives me into this game and not the story, so don't get mad at me for not focusing on the story because it's the game's fault. And on the way we unlock the speed code. This makes you feel faster than everything around you. Instead of them moving slower, you are moving faster than time. Just like COVID. This is really useful since it'll tone things down a bit, give my boomer senses a moment of unclenching my butt for a long time.
I hit a woman for the first time in my life.
As we restart the air filters and parkour around, we are introduced to a new enemy, Donkey Kong. These guys jump at you from a great distance and smack you down to the ground. Their timing can take a little while to get used to, and like any other enemy in the game, they're annoying. Oh look, another machine thing. Can't wait to see what it does. Fuck. Oh great, another puzzle. Here's some Family Guy while I try to solve this with my 20 IQ brain. Alright, more upgrades. Did I also forget to mention that this place has turbines? The wind is fucking back, and it's still janky as ever like it wouldn't be in any other game. It's only a matter of time before the enemies have their own shields. Great. Luckily for us, these guys move like old people, so we have plenty of time to take them out. Then we encounter these malfunctioning Beyblades, and we can stop them by pointing at them. We are still somehow living in the 50s. Next we get the Shurikens power up. These guys are used to disable these panels for a limited time. Pro tip, shoot the panel that's closest to whatever it's connected to. You're welcome. But what I love about them most is that you can just spam it and use it as an actual weapon rather than just a platforming and puzzle gimmick. Finally, we can shoot things now. It's about time we have a gun. Great, more puzzles. Actually, this one's pretty easy because it doesn't require you to solve a Rubik's Cube. So let's just skip to Ohayo gozaimasu. Yes, I speak Naruto, and welcome to present day Tokyo. This is exactly how I remembered it after watching Jujutsu Kaisen. We gain the ability Tempest, and it's much like the Force. You push things, enemies, and bullets. That's pretty much it. After 5 minutes of solving Tetris, yes, that's how long it took me, we are introduced to a new enemy, an Oreo cookie. These guys shoot a wide projectile that requires us to dodge underneath them. Good luck dodging them in the air.
This is troublesome.
How do I disable it?
First, you should get on top. You could probably cut it down. It won't hold without the supporting cords.
Hey guys, welcome to the first boss of the game, Tom the Tower. Yes, that's what it's actually called. And all we have to do is to swing our way to the top and cut the cords just like the hospital. The problem here is that there are too many goddamn lasers. Remember that final boss fight in Spider-Man PS4 where you fight Doc Ock and have to avoid touching the ground and avoiding the rocks he throws at you? Imagine that, but with the entire US military strapped onto his back. I would like to take this moment a while just to say that this is the literal definition of insanity. And I've beaten this level in Celeste. Don't you dare try, Jerry Rum. I can only say 4 things about this boss. Insanity, torture, hard as fuck, and too many lasers. After you got the first chord, we are now playing a game of Don't Touch the Lava. Just like Tom the Cat, he spews rage around the walls and kills you if you touch them. Then halfway to getting the top, the lasers are back. Just what I need for a boss fight. More unfair bullshit. You know what? This is getting too much. Let's have a moment of reflection. Close your eyes. Imagine you're in a nice, cozy place, free from stress, with the sounds of nature accompanying the sweet melody of life.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
After we got the 2 chords, all we had to do is to destroy the core. This boss fight is unique. Usually the second phases tend to be a lot harder than the first. Here it's actually not that hard, so I'm just gonna stop all of this now.
Please leave the station in an orderly fashion.
As expected, it was no match.
That boss was a pain in the ass. Hello everyone and welcome to Night City. Hope you like zip lines. This place is gorgeous. Sure, you can see me trying to get this game over with, but I truly admire how amazing this setting is. This game is like 30 gigabytes, yet it still looks better than the new 1 terabyte Call of Duty game. After beating Big Ol' Tommy, we are now on the run to the repository to gather some more data on Project Ghost Runner, and you know what that means. Upgrades, people. More upgrades. Here we encounter our new enemy, the Amazon delivery drones. You know, they don't pose as much of a threat as I expected them to be. These guys mostly serve as a platforming gimmick rather than an actual enemy, but there are parts later where they can actually kill you. I just noticed these buildings are quite tall, and I can't get over to each one because I'm a ghost runner, not a ghost jumper. Luckily, we have jump. It's simple, you jump. Speaking of which, there's nothing to speak of onwards except for the architect's rambling.
It controls the flow of resources between the city. Mara strictly controls the flow of resources to save.
So you know what, I'm just gonna jump to the next level. You know, I haven't seen many melee enemies in a while. Typical anime weeb. You can solve all your problems by parrying, even a nuke. These guys leap at you from a great distance and attack you with their puny katanas. Yeah, mine's better cause I have a CSGO skin attached to it. Pro tip, spend more money on CSGO. But unlike any other enemies we have encountered so far, except for the dudes with the pistols, these guys can be parried. Oh my god, femboys still exist. You know, I haven't seen any new enemies yet. Oh god, sniper. What else can I say? Alright, so in this part, close combat is not the best option. The best option here is to parry. This is a great way to practice the timing in this game. It took me roughly 6 minutes to get past this part, by the way. Oh great, another puzzle. For this specific puzzle, you fuck around and find out. That's it. Hope you learned from your geometry class, cause you're definitely gonna need it here. All we have to do is to grab a bunch of orbs, and for lore reasons, we're here to find the data we're looking for.
Strange. It's gone. The data's not there.
Then get me out of here, I don't want to
But
do
the
this
server's
shit.
Intact.
Oh my, it's a woman. We gotta chase her. And to prove our speed, we gotta chase the train too. This part's awesome. I like train sequences in video games, and you can't have a train sequence without having to avoid obstacles. I somehow keep getting hit by those damn barriers. Am I that fat? Oh, it's a fellow fan. Alright.
That's your stop.
GL-74 located. Kill switch component not found. Mission to engage. Granted.
I think I found my life. I'm not gonna lie.
Welcome to the second boss fight in the game, and my personal favorite. You see, the first boss, Tom, is a giant tower and doesn't really feel like a boss and feels more like a Geometry Dash level. This one is a straight up duel, mano a mano, the duel of fates. I see a parry meter and my neurons activate. It's about time we finally get some actual use out of this katana. The parry timing is more strict than ever. The moment you see that yellow flash, you parry that attack immediately. This fight is my personal best because it's not a gimmick fight. The only thing she's weak to is me hitting her, and the only thing I'm weak at is my parry timing. I played rhythm games before, how am I losing to this bitch? Every time you miss the timing correctly, you get pushed back, and if you miss most of the time, you get knocked out of the platform. That's a new tagline for content creation. Please continue watching this episode for more philosophical thoughts with yours truly. Of course, we can't have a Ghost Runner fight without the platforming. This boss arena is big, but not to the point where you have to climb up Burj Khalifa to land a single hit. I hate that boss so much. Every time you land a hit, she leaps to another dimension and throws laser at you. What's with this game and lasers? You know what, I'm just gonna stop talking now, let's just end this.
Flawless.
You could say that again. After taking a deep look at this woman's Neuralink chip, we get what I call the anime slice. It's the same deal with what we just did to Hell. Yes, I learned her name right after decapitating her head. That's the power of the newly released Apple Vision Pro. Please sponsor me, Apple. This ability is pretty much the same as the Force, though it looks cooler, I guess.
You're getting close to the core. Security is getting much tighter. There are sentry guns ahead. I can't hack them.
Welcome to LA. I've never been there, but I imagine that place is filled with garbage. Here we have the turret. Just avoid them. Our new mission is to get to the core. Simple as that. We're now close to the end. Just to test our mettle once again, here is what I call Hell. I've been stuck here for nearly 20 minutes. This is what happens when you put too many enemies together in one area. It's Ninja Gaiden all over again. God damn it! Huh. I wasn't actually that far off. We have now reached an Amazon warehouse. First impressions? Not a lot of boxes lying around here. Here we are introduced to a new enemy, Mr. Krabs. You see, we are technically a robot which has a ton of expensive mechanical and electrical parts. It's no surprise that Kim Kardashian is off to chase us. To respond to the haters out there, I don't know much about Kim, I just went to Google and searched for some funny jokes. So here's the joke to lay things down. These guys crawl around at an insane speed, which is commendable for a guy in a wheelchair. They chase you down and explode like homing missiles. There's no way of killing them. Instead, like solving any other problem in life, you avoid them. They're not the most annoying, but with how fast and how many there are, you are pushed to go fast most of the time. So fast to the point you miraculously ended up in Japan. Nani? Hey guys, Logan Paul here. Today we're doing a vlog here in Japan. For this vlog we're going to collect a ton of orbs that signify how lame this joke is getting. Come on man, that happened like 10 years ago, get it over with. But yeah, all we have to do is collect a bunch of orbs while trying to figure out where the hell you're supposed to go. Don't you just love puzzles? You spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do only to end up finding that the answer is to commit die. Oh, look at that. There's the exit. Now for our final ability, we have the Mind Control, an ability so useful that I forgot there was something like this ability and chose to use my primate abilities to kill a bunch of bad guys. On the way to the core, now I don't know if this is a glitch or not, but whenever I get the shurikens and try to throw them while holding on to the railings, I die for some reason, and there aren't any enemies trying to gun me down or chase me, I just die for no reason. This only happened a couple of times, so it wasn't like a hurdle to take care of, but it is something that I want to point out. Right after this glitch, we enter Mikolash, the host of the nightmare. This pussy won't stop moving around. To counter his shtick, we must resort to Hawaiian violence and go faster than light. Like hell, these guys throw lasers at you. This isn't much of a problem, but they just won't stop!
These used to serve as the laboratories of the world's top scientists. And I do mean the world. We couldn't save all humanity, but we could save the best of us.
Hello, and we are now at the final level of the game, the Activision workplace.
Sucked, dude. They paid me 36% of industry standard for my job. The working conditions were terrible. That was basically it.
This place, sucks. Too much green, too many enemies cobbled together in one area, and very little room to move around. It's Ninja Gaiden all over again! Now we encounter the last enemy of the game, rats. Get it? Guess there are too many of them when they... Never mind. These guys can be annoying, and the only way to stop them is to swing your blade and hope for luck that you might get the actual dude. Oh yeah, if you kill the original guy, the clones stop attacking and disappear. I gotta say, I love this part. Somehow I got over this entire area in one attempt. I felt so badass that I should write a book. You see, that's the best part of the game. When you do something cool, it will definitely be cool, and no matter how many attempts it takes you, finishing off your enemies will never not be awesome.
So, do you even know what drives you, puppet? What the endgame is? You have done nothing wrong, puppet, but I can't let you be, as long as that demon in your head exists. You're a threat to everything I've built.
Hey guys, and welcome to the final stage of the game. Our goal now is to kill Barnacle's tentacles in this very small arena. Let me be honest with you, this is kind of underwhelming. The first boss is a literal tower of insanity, yes, but that one requires you to be precise with your jumps and dashes. It's a bullshit boss, but at least it gave quite a challenge. The second boss is pure anime. You parry the attacks and fight back after the boss gets tired. It requires a bit of platforming, but it mostly comprises actual sword-to-sword combat. This one is wait for the boss to do its attack and dodge out of the way. Mara still gave a bit of a challenge, but it just kind of pales in comparison to the other two bosses in my opinion. Most importantly, this is more so a gimmick boss. You wait for her to finish all her attacks, and when she does this one attack, you make sure it's aimed towards one of the generators. This basically Simon Says. The first boss is not fun, but I enjoyed the difficulty. The second boss cannot be topped. This one is just boring. So let's just finish this and just call it a day.
Resist him, not me! I should have taken your head! Mindless tool.
Congratulations. You fulfilled your purpose. Mankind's greatest enemy is dead. We can now proceed to the next stage of my plan. Allow me to do the honors.
What are you doing?
This is interesting.
Do not struggle, TR-74. I need your body, but I don't need the rest of you anymore. The rebels broke you, made you independent, and I was too weak to take back control. Too fractured, but you strengthened me, and now it's time to take back what's mine.
Hello and welcome back to Ghost Runner. The game still hasn't ended. Apparently the architect is a bit of a lunatic and who wants to enslave humanity after all this time. Who would have guessed the AI that's been guiding us for a long time would betray us? Anyway, this isn't technically a boss fight per se, but more of a platforming challenge. And this suits well for the final stage of the game. We've been utilizing our combat skills for so long that it's high time to hone our platforming skills. And I can't say I got any better. This part just kills me. The orbs are too fucking big. Your mom would look like a hamster compared to it. What makes this part harder is the platformers. You move much slower if you go towards the opposite direction of where the platforms are heading, and since the orbs are too big, you die in an instant. There are also times when the platforms just don't appear, making you fall to your death. And when they do appear, most of the time you're gonna die by the orbs. It's so bullshit! And that's not all, you still have this part. Actually, this one isn't that bad. It's still a challenge, but not one that makes you want to spend 15 minutes on it. Oh great, more orbs. Actually, this one's actually fine. You get more control here, but the limited space you have is definitely a problem here. So after all that pizzazz, we finally killed the architect. And let me just say something. I don't know why, but something about how the architect moves and looks just feels cartoonish. I don't know why, I'm just saying. Finally, Mara and her army of goons have fallen, the climbers grow victorious, and we are finally deemed a hero. A Ghost Runner. So that's Ghost Runner. It's surprising not a lot of people know or talk about this game because this is something you'd see pop up trending on Steam or something. The fact that only a very few amount of people make videos about Ghost Runner is a crime. The gameplay is absolutely spectacular. A perfect blend of fast-paced platforming and combat. The geometry of the levels work perfectly with the gameplay, and you can even run across parts of the map where you're not even supposed to go. It's amazing how they even sought to add collision with the background, because sometimes when I go off course, I can still wall run for a few moments and stay alive. The gameplay doesn't get old. Even if you don't use any of the abilities that you have, there are still so many ways you can take out enemies. Speaking of, even though the enemy variety in this game is not large, it's not much of an issue because every level in every stage is geometrically different, which means the enemy placement makes each encounter unique. So no matter if you keep adding all the enemies or even just the same enemy over and over, the layout for each area plays a vital role in making the gameplay not feel old. The story is fine too, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it suits well for the setting of the game as well. It's cool, it's awesome. The game does feel a bit short, especially with the story, but the whole premise of the game is running, so I guess that's what makes that up. After you beat the game, you get the ability to replay the story in hardcore mode. The layout is slightly different, there are more enemies now, it's essentially New Game Plus. There are still game modes you can try out even if you haven't beat the story. You can select levels in the story mode. There's Kill Run, where you start with a certain amount of time and you gain more time by killing enemies and collecting orbs. If the timer runs out or you get hit, you die and have to restart the level. I can't say I enjoy it, but it's a nice addition. And then there's Wave Mode, where you have to beat 20 waves of increasingly difficult enemies while being rewarded with randomly chosen upgrades between each wave. This is essentially the roguelike mode of Ghost Runner. This mode suits well for the games, especially since you can mix and match the upgrades in the game that suit your playstyle. But with how roguelikes work, you essentially have to make do with what you have. This is essentially the best addition to the game. But of course we can't talk about the DLC, Project Hell, which I'm going to talk about next time because I can't afford it yet.
Why are all ninja games so difficult? Why? Just do it, man. I don't care anymore. What's this? Oh, you gotta be shitting me! Oh hey, you know, it makes me happy knowing that I never have to play Getting Over It ever again. Like, can you imagine if I have to play another game in a similar fashion of Getting Over It? I don't know why irony is my middle name.
With the release of Getting Over It, many indie game developers have attempted to make their own games with a similar style, climbing over random placements of real-life objects while battling against the laws of physics and whatever doodad the developers left there. This game started a renaissance for rage games, as some might call it. Now, there are other rage games that take inspiration from older rage games like Unfair Mario and Trap Adventure, but Getting Over It paved the way for more physics-based games because of its sheer popularity and unique gameplay at the time. And unfortunately for many, it did. On May 24, 2023, solo developer Games created a game titled Only Up and released it via Steam. This game was infamous for being incredibly difficult due to its wacky controls, weird placements for platforms, and the lack of a save system. That's right, there's no save system. And you thought Getting Over It was difficult. That game had a save feature so that whenever you exit the game, you get right back to where you last went off. That was the extent of Benedictus Fucky's generosity in this game. This game said fuck that and just removed a save system from the whole game. I guess it's supposed to replicate the old NES games where most of those games don't have a save feature, but there wasn't an official save system at the time because the old NES games are supposed to feel like you're playing an arcade game. This doesn't feel like an arcade game, this is more like an electric chair. Aside from the difficulty, this game is known to contain many in-game assets that are copyrighted material, such as the 3D model of Blanket in the Wind and even sound effects from Final Fantasy VII and Minecraft, which led to its inevitable and permanent removal from Steam on September 7, 2023. Not only that, but the game also included NFTs on the player character's assets, which sounded perfectly fine to do when Steam banned any games that buy and sell NFTs since October 2021. Thank God this game was incredibly problematic. But what is this game truly about?
Why the fuck do you think I'm here?
So the game begins... This is the most enticing loading screen I have ever seen. We begin in a junkyard, off to a great start. So you can choose a bunch of hats to wear, there's also a timer, an elevator. Yeah, this is going well so far. So, since this is in 3D, there are multiple ways to get to the top. Yeah, it's the same goal as Getting Over It, just get to the top. That is simple, and as per usual, your main enemies are the game's controls and the physics of the game. There's a bunch of detail to get over with, so I'm not going to go through every single obstacle in the game, and I'm not going to include a raging compilation. That's been done to death. Instead, watch me suffer in the background while I talk about something else. A little while ago, when I was looking for hobbies to distract myself from the fact that I was born to play the hardest games of all time,
the birth certificate ain't lying,
I got into reading. Now, when I was a wee little kid, I never liked reading. I found it boring and monotonous. I didn't like it. I never wanted to read another book in my life.
Irony really is my middle name.
When my mom gifted me her iPhone, there was this weird little yellow speck on my homepage. Books, specifically Apple books. Isn't it more suitable to call this Apple Library than Apple Books?
Why am I bitching about something from a company that separated monitors from monitor stands and sold those monitor stands at around $1,000?
Inside this app, there are tons of books that you can read for free. It was mostly filled with classics, literature books, kids books, and some textbooks here and there. But there was one that caught my eye. Dracula. What the fuck are these? So this is what I consider to be the first obstacle of the game. In front of you there's a whole conglomerate of pipes, and it's a maze. Some lead to dead ends and others intersect with other pipes. Now it doesn't look that hard to traverse, but God, this is where the controls truly shine. To kick your own ass. It's easy to dash and plummet your way out of the pipes, leading you to your death. The controls are so fucking sensitive, it's unbearable. It's easy if you're running forward, but doing so in any other direction is a death sentence. I wouldn't even try it. The best way you can save yourself from falling is to grab onto the pipes so long as you're not far away from them. You just have to flick the camera fast enough to grab onto the pipes. This one, with the pipe that descends in a spiral, is brutal. You can't even walk in this pipe. You have to stop and adjust yourself if you don't want to fall. And it is slow. Fuck. Anyways, Dracula. Now, the only knowledge I have about Dracula is that he is the vampire. That's about it. So I went in and read the book without a ton of expectations, and wow. Just to note, this is the first novel that I have ever read. I read The Fellowship of the Ring, and that is considered a fantasy novel, but I didn't own it. An old friend just let me borrow it. So this is technically the first novel that I own, even though it's free in the Books app. Whatever. So the novel has an interesting approach where each chapter is a diary log of each one of the characters, i.e. in the first person perspective. And the story begins with a guy named Jonathan Harker, an Englishman, I think. Look, I finished the story months ago now, so I'm just spitballing what I feel is the actual story. So Jonathan is sent to Transylvania to do some paperwork, something about real estate, with a guy named, you guessed it, Count Vlad Dracula. After Jonathan stops being oblivious to the creepy shit that's happening inside the castle, he encounters Dracula doing vampire shit. He gets captured by 3 hot vampire ladies. When he failed to escape the castle, he found Dracula inside a coffin and smacked him on the head with a shovel. He also finds out that Dracula is shifting 50 boxes of earth to a bunch of places in London or something. And this last diary log shows him escaping a bunch of madmen and trying to escape through the castle walls. Then it cuts to 2 ladies talking to each other over the mail. Mina Harker, Jonathan's fiancée, and her friend Lucy Westenra. Fuck. Another pipe. This one is just fucking painful. I know it's a straight line, but god. I know there's a much safer path to take here, but I saw some stuff across my screen. Beds. When you think beds are at their best in Minecraft, think again. The beds in this game are a godsend. These act like trampolines which can launch you across long distances. These are fucking beautiful, but this is pretty much the extent of game's generosity here. Another good thing about these beds is that you get a ton of control of your movement in the air. The bad thing about these beds is that you get too much control of your movement in the air, and for this specific part, it's easy to miscalculate the landing on one bed and the other. I know I keep taking the riskier paths in the game, but I just want to get this game over with. I already have more than an hour of playtime in this game. But what does this specific bed do? Well, it leads to other beds launching you upwards until you come across the entrance of a warehouse. Getting to the actual warehouse is easy enough, but man, you have so much air control that you can miss the next flight of beds if you're not focused enough. But luckily, I made it in the warehouse. Now, where was I? So, Lucy was talking about getting married and she has but 3 choices to marry. A doctor who diagnoses a madman talking about bugs and shit, totally not related to Dracula or his evil cult, an American, and a fancy British guy. Right, I forgot to mention that all of this takes place in the 1800s, which explains why almost everyone in the story is so collected and eloquent. In the end, Lucy marries the British guy, but the other 2 seem pretty chill about it and the 3 dudes become friends. Why can all nationwide problems be resolved like this? Alright, that's a cute little tangent, but let's head back to the main stuff. Dracula boards the ship Demeter along with the 50 boxes of earth, and for many long days across turbulent seas, he tortures the ship's crew and makes landfall on some coast in England. I'm not great with geography, great. So I was supposed to stay on top of the drone, but since my 4-year-old keyboard is starting to work on its own, it pressed the D button for some reason, and I fell beside a windmill. I'm stuck. What do I do next? Well, there's this bed, and jumping on it would make me hit the windmill. I did just that, grabbed onto the giant fan blade, and landed next to a bus station. Cool. Oh hey, another bed. And another bed. And the highway collapsed. Cool. So after Dracula made landfall, Jonathan came back sick and Lucy also got sick. Jonathan was doing alright through his sickness, but Lucy's condition was gradually getting worse, so she called Dr. Robotnik. Ivo could not determine the true nature of Lucy's illness, so he called his old friend and mentor, Dr. Abraham Van Helsing.
1 year! It will take me 1 year to summon an army from the guts of hell itself. Need someone to tag along and tell weird personal stories?
You can tell I love a character when I call them their full name. So Van Helsing is a smart Dutch guy who happens to be the only person in the story who knows much about vampire stuff, and with this strange knowledge, he concludes that dear Lucy has a severe case of the its. He told her to do some stuff with garlic flowers and to keep the windows closed, but her mom threw the flowers out the window and kept it open. I never understand why some people leave their windows open when they sleep. I know it allows fresh air to come into the room, but when it's nighttime, it just makes it easier for people to sneak into the room. Now, that was never a case of mine because my house is fortified like a dungeon, but still. So we ride an elevator, jump on some cash, carefully bounce on the bed to skip a large portion of the building, take another elevator, and there we go. We finished the tutorial? Okay, I'm fine with having the tutorial take about a good quarter of the game. I'm alright with that. What I don't get is when half of my game time is spent on a fucking tutorial. I fell more times here than I did once I got past the tutorial. I get it that the players might have wanted players to be more relaxed after such hell, but that's not how most games progress. Usually, each level in the game gets harder and harder. That's the rule of thumb. This is stupid. There's barely any increase in difficulty here, it just feels lazy at this point. This game is lazy because the developers didn't even try to make their own game models and instead stole copyright material. Fuck! But I want to continue Dracula, which is a more impressive creation of man than this fucking game. Before that, the levels in this game are relatively easy. There's a lot less stuff that's pretty annoying, stuff to worry about, and stuff that can fuck up your progress. It's just that it keeps going. Whatever, let's head back to the good stuff. So Lucy got increasingly sick to the point where the boys need to donate blood. Now, blood transfusion was pretty new at the time, so it wasn't the safest nor the cleanest way to help revitalize someone, but for this story specifically, it was the only best option they have. Night after night, all the boys donated their blood, including Van Helsing, but unfortunately, Lucy died. And when Lucy was buried in a graveyard, a mysterious pale woman was seen biting little children. I wonder who could that be? The boys heard it, they saw that the woman was Lucy, the boys were horrified, they freed Lucy from vampirism by killing her in her sleep, the boys were horrified, Jonathan got well, and since Jonathan was the only person to know about Dracula, the boys came. Van Helsing spends an entire chapter talking to Mina Harker, who read Jonathan's diary during his time in Dracula's castle, and they both share notes about how to find and kill Dracula. Meanwhile, the boys, Jonathan included, roamed the streets of somewhere in England to find the missing boxes of earth of Dracula. They found all but one, and while they were searching for the last one, they left Mina alone in her own room and Dracula showed up right beside her. Great security, guys. Luckily, they showed up just in time. Unluckily, Dracula bit her, or did something evil, I forgot. The boys found that Mina was ill, the boys were horrified. However, whatever Dracula did helped Mina find out his precise location. So the boys all chose to ride on horseback while Van Helsing and Mina traveled by a ship. What perfect timing. Fuck. This is like having to circle the entire map of Los Santos in GTA 5 on foot. Why does it keep going? This game is meant to be played in under a few hours. Look at where I fucking am! This is too fucking much! Alright, let's just finish the story. So Van Helsing and Mina arrive at Dracula's castle. They find a large tomb with Dracula's name engraved on it. They encounter the hot vampire woman from the beginning of the story. Van Helsing killed him with his chastity belt. Meanwhile, the boys hunt down a bunch of madmen protecting Dracula. Jonathan cuts Dracula's head off, while the American stabs him with a wooden stake. The American died, Jonathan and Mina had a son named after the American, the doctor and the British guy got married, not to each other though, Van Helsing is Van Helsing, Dracula's dead, and the story's finished. I really like how each character describes each event in the form of a diary. It gives us a better understanding of the mentality of each individual character. I love all of the characters equally, even though I forgot the names of the two of them. Dracula, on the other hand, is kind of a mixed bag for me. He's more present in the first part of the story than in the following chapters. In the first few chapters, we get to see the history of Dracula through his own words. However, once the story shifted back to the other characters, mainly the parts when Lucy was sick and the boys were all forming a plan, Dracula's presence was just kind of flattened for me. It's like Sauron in a way. He is an active threat in the story, but he's not technically present. Also, I didn't really like how cheap Dracula's defeat was. I mean, he's sleeping, so it would make it easier to kill him than if he were awake, but still. So that was the infamous novel of Bram Stoker, Dracula.
I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It's a classic, everyone should read it. It's awesome. Oh fuck. So we're back in another junkyard. It really is poetry, isn't it? But there's a dragon. So since I can't take this game any longer, or else I'll go ahead and do something productive, I used the dragon to skip another long section of the endgame, walked on the interstellar black hole, and finally finished the game. I hate my life. You may have noticed that I didn't talk much about the game itself and talked more about Dracula, and I did that for two reasons. One, I fucking hate this game. Two, since this game is pretty open in terms of level design, there are more than just one route to progress further up. It's not like Getting Over It where it's in 2D and there's mostly one route to take in each level. With the game being open, there are many different strategies to take, either progressing the game much faster or much safer. Also, most of it is just running and jumping. There aren't a lot of times where the game surprises you, other than the occasional pranks in each level. Even with the millions of objects scattered around, the game just feels empty. Everything here is soulless. The character doesn't even have any emotions. A guy in a cauldron has more expression than this guy. There really aren't any unique experiences to find here. It's just like Getting Over It, but it's in full 3D, the physics are much more random, the environment is soulless, and is much more frustrating. Remember, there are no checkpoints here, so whenever you exit the game, you restart your progress from scratch, which means you're forced to play through the entire game in just one sitting. Bongo Fongo was a menace to society, but even he was more merciful than this abomination. I'm glad this game got removed from Steam. Beating this game isn't even rewarding. You don't get any cosmetics, like how you get a gold cauldron in Getting Over It. Nothing. But there's an astronaut at the end of the game telling you that obstacles are never ending and that you should keep fighting to achieve your goals. What the fuck? I could just search for some inspirational quotes online and it would still feel more rewarding than this fuck. Fuck this game. This game does nothing but wreak havoc among the society. This game contributes to no one. It doesn't contribute to the gaming landscape. It is a useless piece of shit that deserves to be burned down to ashes and have its charred remains get fucked by a bunch of rats.
Is this who I am now? Am I just going to continue complaining about the hardest games of all time because that's the sole purpose of my existence? Well, there's another game waiting for me, similar to the one I just played. And I think if I survive the next game, I should be alright. But I need a drink. All that shouting really killed my lungs. Oh hey, I haven't much else to do before the year ends, and I think it's fitting if I play another difficult game while I talk. I don't know why climbing is becoming a thing of mine, it just happened.
Who could have guessed that after playing 2 games where you have to climb to the top with wacky physics and controls, another climbing game gets introduced to me. Why are people making games like this? The influence of Getting Over It cannot be underestimated. It's like underestimating the rise of a clone of Vine, and that clone actually became the most popular social media website of all time. P.S. Vine is better. To end this year, I decided to get things over with and play one of the last difficult games inspired by Getting Over It. To think this is a Christmas present is an understatement. I literally lost 5 years of my life playing this game.
Maybe it is a gift.
A difficult game about climbing was developed by solo developer Pontypants, who even uploaded a devlog on YouTube discussing the process of the physics and the gameplay, as well as how he shifted from using the Godot engine to the Unity engine. As you can tell, it is heavily inspired by Getting Over It. Unlike Only Up, which is just a soulless platformer with no unique gameplay and a bunch of copyright material and NFTs, this game features the controls in a way where movement is restricted to only using your arms and hands to traverse obstacles, because legs are useless when your character is bald. There's evidence. Well, there's not much to talk about, so let's get on with the game. This game begins with you in the middle of a body of water, and in front of you is your first obstacle. Just like Getting Over It, you're gonna be moving your arm a lot. How far you move your arm is also going to determine the power and length of swinging. It also increases the chance of hurting your arm. That's right, psychological and mental damage isn't enough. Add a broken carpal tunnel in there as well. You hold the mouse button to hold onto a ledge with your respective arm. The same goes with releasing it. It's as simple as Getting Over It, and you can master the controls so quickly that it feels like the mouse is an extra limb. But, oh, what's this? This game has controller support?
The mouse being the only control method adds to the frustration of the game, so I think this game would also work well with a controller.
I imagine might be worse than using a mouse. Actually, I'm regretting this idea. Please, if any modders watch this, do not make a mod for this. Oh god. I never used my controller. I know it might have made the game a bit easier, but I don't do that. I'm a humble man. But I have limits. This game was only released on PCs. It's meant to be played on PCs. I will do fine on mouse and keyboard. So in this first level or tutorial, you are introduced to the main principles of the game. Climbing, of course, is the main one, so there are specific objects that you can hold on to and others where you can't. Another thing to master in this game is swinging. Just like getting over it, you need to generate enough momentum to get across large gaps. It's easier said than done though. Your arms are more sensitive, and because of that, you can flail too much in the air and you'd lose progress. Also, do not waste more of your time. There's nothing at the edges of the map when you swim there. It's useless. Don't do that. This, however, is the first real obstacle of the game. You have to swing at the right speed and angle to grab onto that ledge. It looks easy, but man, is it hard. You have to do some precise calculations to get this right. Even the slightest mistake will make you start this level again because of how sensitive the controls are. And you wouldn't believe how many tries it took me to get past that gap. I mean, you probably don't believe me a lot every time I talk, so why am I even bothering? Anyway, when you make it across the gap, carefully swing your way under, climb the most slippery tree in existence, and... is that a checkpoint?
This really is Christmas.
I can't believe it. There's checkpoints here. There's no way. I don't think my eyes and ears are lying to me. This is real. Checkpoints exist. But it also means we entered the second level, and this is just going to get a lot harder as we progress. Do you hear that? Actual progression. I'm still letting out my anger and it gets only up. Fuck that game. In this new level, almost everything is wet. However, to make up for this level's love of moisture, there are these plants or flowers that you can surprisingly hold on to. It's as strong as my will to be optimistic. Not. There's this part in the level where you have to swing beside a large waterfall. The rocks you need to grab are incredibly small, and trying to grab them can be a bit tricky, especially since accidentally holding your mouse button and missing can make the waterfall drag you downwards. That's pretty much a highlight of this level, other than the part where you have to grab onto this large hand. I'm glad this game doesn't include height features so that everyone can experience what it's like to be an Asian. That level was a nice trip to nature. Hopefully the next one has a similar theme. Of course not. So this is when the game finally gets more difficult. There are a lot of jumps involved, meaning you have to stretch your arms when progressing through certain parts of the level. Especially with the large wheels at the beginning of the game, you really need to focus on the timing to get to where you must go. That's about it for the majority of this level. It's all about timing. It doesn't look that hard since it may look like the turning wheels can help you progress much faster, but it really isn't. This level is incredibly tiring, especially if you make a mistake. The consequences are severe. But the level doesn't end there. You have to climb through these buildings and windows. There is this one little jump that might look terrifying, but it's actually easy. Then you have to carefully make your way up this dome-like structure. And this is where the level truly shines. You have to swing your way across a bunch of clothes, and it is painful. The clothes are so sensitive whenever you move. It is insane. There are also parts where you have to jump across to get to the next clothes. This is starting to get on my nerves. For the next level, you have to climb across this bouldering wall. If you grab the green handles, they will fall off, so don't grab them. Next, you have to use both your arms on this red circular handle and try to swing with the right momentum to get to the tree branch. This one's not that hard to fail, you just need to be careful not to overshoot your jump. For this next one, you can climb up this wheel, however that might take up a long time since the wheel turns around a lot. Instead, you can just swing like before and try to grab onto the sails. This one is a lot trickier than the last, so you need to be careful. Just make it to the top, swing across the power line to the left, and try not to grab onto those shoes. I haven't tried it myself, but I don't trust those shoes. For the last obstacle in this level, you have to balance this thing and get the right momentum to grab onto that anchor. The problem is that this thing likes to move around wherever you are, so you're going to spend a lot of time trying to get this thing to progress. Failing here is incredibly drastic, since you're likely going to restart this entire level again. This last part takes a long time to beat, and I suddenly have this urge to kill my mouse. Not yet though, soon. The start of this next level is much more challenging than the latter part, since the obstacles that follow are pretty straightforward. Carefully climbing up, you have to swing across these crates to get to the other side. All you need to do here is to be as fast as possible.
Once again, do not hold on to the green handle. Do a little bit more careful climbing, and this is the hardest part of the level. You have to grab onto the first sack, and once the weights start to move, you have to be fast enough to swing to the other sack and grab onto the pipes on the other side. Failing this part just means you have to restart the level, which isn't that bad since the entire level is a bit short, but this part is brutal. But after that part, it's smooth sailing from here. Just be careful not to fall here since you might end up back in the second level, which would be incredibly devastating. This next level might be the most difficult of all. You have to swing across these rocks which look harder than it is. You even have to slightly stretch your arm to get to certain rocks. But that doesn't end there. First you have to swing correctly to get to the wheel. The problem is that the wheel is too far, so the chances of you missing or overshooting your swing are pretty high. I hate this part with all my life. The placement of the wheel is so unfair. You have the high ground before reaching the wheel, and even trying to get there, you're most likely going to get bumped by the wall. I hate it. Lastly, once you get to the wheel, you must swing towards the next rock. Actually, this last part isn't that hard, but I fucking hate the wheel. It took me so many attempts, I hate it. After the wheel, you have to climb through these lanterns. It may look intimidating, but surprisingly you get a ton of grip on these lanterns, so all you have to worry about is to not let go of your grips. For the last part of this level, you just have to carefully make your way through these rocks. Each of these rocks is so far away from the other and has little space for you to hold on to. Plus, this part is a bit long, so just take your time trying to get across. Finally, we made it to the last level of the game. The last circle of hell. What makes this level really good for me is that there isn't a ton of special gimmicks. It is purely made out of raw, traditional rock climbing, and I love it. All you need to finish this level is pure skill. Everything you learned from the previous levels has summed up to this. It's great, but the fact that I call this level great doesn't excuse the fact that this level is terrifying. Failing at the first half of the level isn't incredibly drastic since you'll end up right back to the start of the level, but I've come so far and suffered too much anger that every fall I make is pain. Most of the challenges in this level is mostly trying to make correct jumps and patiently trying to get a good grip on small rocks. Once you make it halfway into the level, the spaces where you need to hold on to are so tight that it's easy for your hands to slip away, causing you to fall. Not only that, but the jumps you need to make have to be so precise. In some parts, you need to swing wildly mid-air, and other times you need to stay upright. The jumps just kill me every time. It's so hard to jump with a mouse since it's so sensitive. Even when I adjust the settings, the controls feel weird because I got so used to how sensitive the mouse is. But other than all that, nothing is as brutal as this. Upon grabbing this red handle, you have to gain enough momentum to stay upright enough to jump and grab onto the rocks on the other side. This is pain at its fullest. You don't even want to know how much time I spent trying to get there, and yet I failed at this part over and over again. Wait. Snow? Breeze? Air?
The air keeps pushing us and it is infuriating. The wind makes everything way harder. No! And god damn, the wind is fucking back, and it's still janky as ever, like it wouldn't be in any other game.
Air? It was air the whole time! So after the last challenge, climbing through the last set of rocks, we finally made it to the cabin where we received a crown and some confetti, but that cloud seemed a little bit suspicious. Oh, it's not over? Not over? A ladder? Oh, it's the credits. And we return back to the tutorial. Great. So that's a difficult game about climbing. Compared to Getting Over It and my least favorite game in the world, I'd say this game is the easiest out of them all. It's much more forgiving with the inclusion of save points throughout each level, and the fact that it's short. It being a bit easier may be a problem for some people, but for someone who has very little time to do anything, I don't really see an issue there. Also, I love that there's controller support, which, according to most people, makes the game easier compared to playing on the mouse. I know I played this entire game without a controller support, since I thought that playing with a mouse was a definitive experience for the game, but I might be wrong on that. As for the level designs, there's not much to talk about really. It takes a lot of inspiration from Getting Over It, and I respect that. My main complaint about the levels is that the objects, where if you grab onto them, they move, and you might think that you're gonna fall, but you're actually not. Those objects tend to get repeated, not a whole lot, but more than they need to in each level. I wish there were more environmental hazards at each level. Maybe at the last level, the breeze can push you a bit slightly. I know this might contradict what I said earlier about the game being too easy, which I like, but with environmental hazards, it might make the game more interesting. Also, I'm glad that there's no background music or some buffoon quoting random people in the background. That was one of the main reasons why I'm never playing Getting Over It ever again. I have huge respect to you, Sir Pontypants.
I don't know why I do these things. It's like playing the hardest games of all time is just an instinct of mine. It just happens and I can't control it. You know, this is the worst Christmas ever. Why is my mouse a telephone? Yeah?
Hey, it's me. Listen, I demand a fucking raise for saving your past self. I had to do your itsy bitsy ass task in the middle of a fucking galactic war. Don't try adding onion rings to my race. I had enough of circles.
Who's this?
What? You don't remember me? You're the first fucking person to say my name right.
I think you got the wrong number.
Wait, what? Who am I talking to?
Oh, my name is...
Yep, totally got your name.
Look, I honestly don't know who you are, or why my mouse is a telephone, and what do you mean by you're saving my past self?
Oh crap. Quick question. Do you wear glasses?
I mean, I used to always wear it, but then I lost it for a time, then I got a new one, so it's probably tradition at this point.
Do you remember sending onion rings to anyone before?
No?
Shit. Hand call.
Wait. This is the weirdest Christmas ever.
Well, there's only one way to find out if I did things right.